Tonight, the Chancellor insists Britain is open for business once again. As the UK's International Investment Summit draws to a close, the government's claiming more than £60 billion has been pledged. Will it help deliver the growth that Team Starmer desperately needs? Health Secretary Wes Streeting will join us as his team trumpet a new deal with the world's biggest pharmaceutical company. He also tells me he thinks there's too much regulation in the NHS and the economy. But the shadow of Brexit hasn't got away. The government and business leaders seem to agree it's hurt the UK's growth. David Lammy's been in Luxembourg for an EU reset. So will anything change? Also, tonight, the government says it's tightening up the rules on gifts for ministers. For the first time, the costs will be made public. Will it finally draw a line on the freebies affair? And as the business secretary says life in opposition was so ageing, he now resembles a former monarch, we'll look at other political lookalikes. Two real deals joining us in the flesh tonight, Josh Simons and Steve Baker, who'll be with us for the next hour. It's Monday, I'm Sophie Ridge, live from Westminster, and this is the Politics Hub. Hello, good evening. Well, today was really about optimism. An investment summit championing the businesses pouring money into the UK with a shiny new number attached, £63 billion, the amount of new investment. Keir Starmer said this is a great moment to back Britain. Rachel Reeves said she's never been more optimistic. This is a government that's been on a journey in its first 100 days in power. Perhaps an acknowledgement that they haven't always got the tone right. It's been a bit too bleak, a bit too gloomy. I've been thinking quite a lot about an interview I did in September with Andy Haldane, the former chief economist at the Bank of England. Now, he's not an enemy. He's the kind of guy the government want and need to get on side. And as the months rolled on, I felt like this interview has taken on more significance. The first thing he said was stop being so gloomy. The government's generated a fear and foreboding and uncertainty among businesses and investors, which he said was unfortunate because just after the election there was a sense of renewal, a confidence about the UK. There has definitely been a course correction on this. We've seen it today. He also called on Rachel Reeves to change the fiscal rule to get debt falling, which puts in jeopardy, he said, our ability to invest and to grow, and said it should be tweaked to weigh the assets we create as well as the liabilities. Now, the expectation is that this is exactly what the Chancellor is going to do in the budget. This interview was done in September. I have no idea, obviously, if the PM and the Chancellor watched it, but what it does tell me is that this is a government that has listened to the concerns of business voices, potentially with a bit of alarm. And it also tells me that this is a government that has changed course, whatever people tell you. We'll discuss that in the first part of this programme, but first, here's our business and economics correspondent, Paul Calsay.
In the historic heart of the City of London, investors from around the world gathered to hear the hard sell from a Prime Minister having a hard time.
Today we're pursuing a different ambition, a shared ambition, growth. You have to grow your business and I have to grow my country.
Ministers were out in force after preparations had been knocked off course by the Transport Secretary, calling for a boycott of P&O ferries, just as its parent company was planning a £1 billion investment, a deal only confirmed by its chairman as the summit began. An obvious question then for the Chancellor.
Would you get on a P&O ferry?
I wouldn't have any problems with getting on a P&O ferry, and I think it's really important that we've secured this investment for Britain, because this investment in the Thames Gateway port will bring good jobs, paying decent wages to people in that community in Essex, and will also expand our capabilities to import and export around the world, all contributing to growth.
Rachel Reeves needs plenty more like it to deliver on her plans, but with the budget just over a fortnight away, might these same investors soon be asked to bail out the public finances too?
You're asking for investment today, you're making the case for Britain, but are you not also looking at that room and thinking, I can shake these people upside down for tax revenue, capital gains tax, increases in employer national insurance? They're actually going to be slapped with a load of taxes not long after they're out of the door.
Well, the precondition for bringing investment into Britain is to bring stability back to Britain. And what so many businesses say to me, not just today, but whenever I meet them, is that over the last few years, the lack of stability around policy making, the lack of stability in our financial and fiscal position as a country deterred investment in Britain. And so I know what businesses want to see in the budget is bringing that stability back to the UK economy.
The government has invested a significant chunk of its political capital in an unashamed pitch for the hard cash it needs to deliver on its programme. But the row over P&O demonstrates that whether it's workers' rights reforms that might add costs to business or the need to rebuild the public finances, every decision comes with trade-offs.
The NHS is among them. Life science is a priority of a new industrial strategy and reform on the table. Welcome news for this US drugs giant.
Is the UK still an attractive place to invest?
Well, I think in our industry it had sort of lost its luster over the last half decade. New government's in, they're saying the right things.
The Prime Minister presumably thinks a claimed £60 billion in committed investment answer enough and a decent return on his day's work. Paul Kelso, Sky News.
I'll just come out into the newsroom to catch up with Paul, but also our political editor, Beth Rigby, as well. Paul, I just wanted to speak to you first. You're both obviously at the summit today, but you had a story this weekend that feels it's really kind of made the weather for the summit.
Yeah, we told you on Friday lunchtime that a big investment by DP World, which is a multinational ports and logistics operator, wanted to put £1 billion into its London Gateway, which is a big container port on the Thames estuary. That was all being lined up in the choreography of these events. Beth will know it's about matching up the political moment with the good news. And in the middle of that, the government, as you were reporting last week, was announcing its labour rights reforms. Some pretty disobliging comments from Louise Haigh, the Transport Secretary, Angela Rayner as well. Very similar to what they'd said in opposition. In fact, what Conservative ministers had said about P&O Ferries, which is owned by DP World, stirred up again what to the ownership of DP World felt like they were having their nose rubbed in past sins. At the moment, they were being asked to write a cheque for £1 billion. It took 72 hours of pretty frantic back and forth diplomatic efforts to get DP World back on board. And I think it underlined a couple of things. The importance the government put around what happened today, having good news, having big money being announced today, and also the trade-offs that are involved in what Labour's doing. Just last week, labour rights reform, increasing costs on businesses, no matter how gently you do it and how much compromise there is, at the same time as trying to attract this money in. So the £1 billion in the scheme of things, we're talking about 63 today, doesn't feel quite so much, but it did encapsulate those traders. I think on the other side of that, having been there all day, I think they'll be pretty pleased with what they got. They promised a great deal, which I know Beth will talk about, but rolling back regulation, all kinds of supply-side reforms that you wouldn't necessarily associate with a centre-left government. And the investors who were there, I mean, the one at the end of the day, Larry Fink, $10 trillion he controls through his investment funds. BlackRock, that's 3 years GDP for the UK. He said he likes what he's hearing, but there's a warning in there. He said, capitalism, believe me, capital smells opportunity. When there's opportunity, it runs towards it. It also smells problems, and then it runs away. So the kind of what's there for the government is you're making all the right noises, you've got a big programme, deliver on it, we'll put the money in. But if you don't, it's not going to happen.
And Beth, this is a government that needs that private and sector investment. I mean, that's what the whole kind of growth strategy is built around.
Yeah, and it was interesting, actually. Mid-September, I had a briefing with some people in the Treasury about what was coming up. And this was billed back then as a big moment. So this investment summit had been long in the planning and it was viewed as a big moment. It became a really big moment in the light of what's gone on for Starmer's government in the first 100 days. And we saw over the weekend him marking this 100 days anniversary, his first 3 months of government, with not the best report card, to be fair. And so this summit, I think, took on another meaning for the government today. They really needed it to be a reset moment. I think Number 10 and the Treasury thought there was a lot riding on it. And I think by any measure, they would have come out today being pretty pleased with how it went. As Paul was saying, they've got over £60 billion of investment committed into what people were saying to me were shovel-ready projects, making the point that Rishi Sunak at his last investment summit had £28 billion committed. So they are really pleased about that. And then just in the language of it, as Paul was saying, you had a Labour Prime Minister on a stage saying that he wants a shock and awe investment strategy, that he's going to rip up bureaucracy, that all the regulators have to change their approach, that they are all focused to growth as an industrial strategy, and stressing that there's stability and that this is going to be a years, not months type approach, right? That was the sell. What he had was then, you were talking about Larry Fink of Blackstone. He had Eric Schmidt, who's the former chief executive of Google. And Eric Schmidt was in conversation with the Prime Minister, and he said, I was shocked when I heard Labour was in favour of growth, before he went on to say plenty of money is going to come into this country if the government can tackle regulation. So my sort of final couple of thoughts is, number one, this was a really important reset moment and they will be looking to run with this now. Number two, you've got the budget coming up and there are questions around business investment and taxation. But number three, it's almost not just about the budget, it's much bigger than that. It's kind of the promises there. And now the acid test for Starmer is whether he can actually create the conditions for this investment. And we won't know for a few years. But he literally said to the businesses, you know, your job is to grow your businesses. My job is to grow the country. And I have to have investment. So I think from a number 10 perspective, they'll be really pleased with how it's gone. But, you know, can you deliver it? That is a whole nother question.
One more dynamic going on. We saw the Chancellor today. She's in a round of interviews. I spoke to her. She's given a speech, the number 11 dynamic here, and we heard it a bit in my report there. There's a chance she's asking this room to pay twice. They want them to fund the investment in the UK. But in a fortnight's time, she might be asking the businesses to fund the rebuild of the public services. And she did not resile from a question about employers' national insurance, capital gains, and indeed changing one of the two debt rules. It feels like
we're probably
that's
out of
the
time,
direction
but
we're heading on.
Quickly, this is exactly
here we go.
This is exactly a conversation I had with someone in the Treasury. And they said that it's not true that investors, this quotes person, are trapped in a cycle of only caring about one budget. They want a government with a sense of stability and purpose. That's about tax and spend, but also about regulations and barriers. And they matter. Planning reform matters. Stable government matters. The point being, I think it was a nod to, yes, we're probably going to raise business taxes, but we're banking on business seeing the bigger picture.
We're out of time about 2 minutes ago, but you know what? It's been really interesting talking to you.
And you know what? If they've been telling me, I can't hear it.
I can't hear them. We didn't have earpieces in.
I've lost control. Never mind. But this is the big debate. This is the big debate for the government. So you're both forgiven. Thank you very much indeed. Shortly before we came in out, I spoke to the Health Secretary of Wes Streeting. Thank you so much for being on the programme. Great to have you here. So I want to talk to you about today's investment summit. Keir Starmer says it's a great moment to back Britain. Rachel Reeves says she's never been more optimistic. It feels like a bit of a change in tone. Is this an acknowledgement that you, I guess, kind of botched the messaging a bit in the first 100 days, that you weren't positive enough?
Well, when we came in, we found a £22 billion black hole in the public finances, and it's hard to be cheerful about that. And I think it would have been jarring for lots of people if, on one hand, we're saying we're making really tough choices for the country to stabilise the public finances and get the economy back on track, but we're really cheerful about it. Today, though, I mean, £63 billion worth of investment unlocked either during the day with the deals we signed or in the run-up to the investment summit. That's going to create tens of thousands of jobs across the country, and genuinely right across the country, from, you know, places like Blyth and Greater Manchester in the north east and northwest of England, not just in London and the southeast, although there'll be jobs there too. And perhaps even more importantly, not often I'd say, it's even more important than what the Prime Minister and the Chancellor had to say, were the people flying in from outside who were talking about how they viewed this government and how they view this country and its potential. And that really was exciting and affirming, because you've got people who are seeing Britain as a place they want to invest, who are actively signing deals now, but also talking about where that partnership between business and this government can go. One
of the people flying in was the boss of Google. He suggested you need a Minister of Anti-Regulation. Do you agree with him?
Well, I think this argument about pro-anti-regulation, which has sometimes fallen into a left-right argument, has often not been the right debate in politics.
So he's wrong then, the boss of Google?
No, actually, I agreed with him very strongly, actually. I mean, take the NHS. We have huge amounts of regulation, and, of course, it concerns the provision of health and care. That's patient safety. It's life and death. really important that we have regulation in place. My observation, and in fact some work that's currently being done at the moment to review our health regulator, finds that there is actually so much regulation that the people regulated aren't clear about what it is they're supposed to be doing. And we've got multiple regulators who are often colliding with each other and working across each other. So more regulation doesn't always mean better regulation.
So don't you think there's too much regulation in the NHS in some aspects then?
I do, and I also think there's far too much regulation in the economy. And I think we want to focus on what works. Where regulation is standing in the way of success, we will seek to simplify it, and where it's unnecessary, get rid of it. And actually, often that means more effective regulation than just the volumes and volumes, because often what politicians do in particular is say, well, there's a problem, I'll introduce a new regulation, that will solve it. And you do that again and again and again, and before you know it, you're completely drowning in regulation to the extent that the regulators and the regulated aren't clear about what their priorities are. So sometimes simplicity is more effective, and that's been traditionally a right-left debate in British politics, but it really shouldn't be. It should be a right-wrong conversation.
I want to talk a bit about the Green Paper, which was published today as well. This is a line from the foreword written by the Chancellor and Business Secretary. We're forging a closer relationship with the European Union, ensuring smoother trade and simpler processes for doing business. How's that going?
Well, I think there's an opportunity to, now that the dust really has well and truly settled on Brexit, the wrangling's over, the argument's finished, and actually there are new relationships. There's a new government here that isn't scarred by those experiences of bitter Brexit negotiations. There are new players on the continent. I think there really is an opportunity to work more effectively together and build a new partnership. I was at the G7 Health Ministers meeting in Ancona last week, and our European partners there, France, Germany, the European Commission itself, Italy, the hosts, they are interested in working with Britain as their near and closest friend.
Some people might be thinking, there's one market over here, there's another market over here. There's one way to ensure this, smoother trade and simpler processes, maybe having one market. I'm struggling to think of the word. Can you help me?
Yeah, I know, and I campaign passionately to remain in the European Union, but a referendum and 2 subsequent general elections settled that question.
But this isn't about remaining in the European Union. There'll be some people genuinely who are thinking, why can't there be, and I'm not saying what's right or wrong here, but why can't there be an open debate about the single market, about the customs union, without this government trying to shut it down?
Well, the debate has been taking place non-stop in the run-up to and since the referendum.
But it doesn't feel like it is now, though, does it?
Well, because I think people have moved. People have moved on. The country's moved on. The EU's moved on. And let me tell you, not just here but in Brussels, there is no appetite to relitigate those arguments, to reopen things that have been settled. Actually, it's about a new...
Even if the damage is grave.
It's about a new friendship.
Your own Green Paper says investment is reduced by 11% because of Brexit.
There's no doubt that what we warned about in advance of the referendum in terms of the impact on economic growth has come to pass, and that's a fact of life we have to deal with. I think the sweet spot is working as closely with the European Union where we can, but also showing the agility to work with and through partners in other markets as well. And there is that sweet spot there to unlock, and that will be the agile way in which we work.
You're here because you want to talk about a deal that you struck with the world's largest pharmaceutical company. The boss of that company, David Ricks, made the Brexit point on Radio 4 today. He said the difference in the UK on your own now, separate from Europe, is a relatively small market.
And there was another business leader who approached me today to say, look, and this is their continental base, but they said, look, there are a couple of EU regulations that are making life harder for us. They don't apply in the UK. Can we have a conversation? So I think there are some of those opportunities that also open up. The great thing for me about today's summit wasn't just the £63 billion that's been unlocked, the tens of thousands of jobs that will be created in every part of the country. It's also exactly these sorts of conversations where people, particularly not just brilliant business leaders here in Britain, but those from around the world, are coming in and giving their worldview on where Britain sits, the opportunities we can make the most of, and how we can work together with business. And I was on the panel with Dave Ricks today looking at life sciences, data, and there was that constructive challenge and friendly advice that comes from being good partners and good friends. So I'm confident off the back of today, not only will we see the investments come to fruition that we've, in terms of the deals we've signed today and the impact that's going to have, I think there'll be new partnerships, new deals being struck over the coming years that will really put rocket boosters under growth in our country. And that's so important because when we get to the budget and the Chancellor's got difficult choices to make around tax and spending, we should not forget that those choices would not be so hard if Britain's economy was growing to the extent that it did under the last Labour government and to the extent that we've seen around the world. So I think there's real opportunities for growth, which is putting money back into people's pockets and investing in our public services using the proceeds of growth. That's why it matters.
Wes Streeting there. We'll hear from him a little bit later on in the programme. But first, let's bring in our duo for this evening, shall we? The Labour MP, Josh Simons, and the former Conservative Minister, Steve Baker. Great to have you both here. Now, I know you're going to want to talk Brexit, particularly you, but we're going to do that in the next chat, OK? So hold your horses on that one, because I want to talk to you about the economy and the investment summit in particular. Josh, Wes was saying, no, there hasn't been a change of plan. We were all like this all along. But it feels like there has been a change in tone from this government. That's fair, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think what Wes was saying is that, the public expected us, when we came into power after we won the election, to level with them and be honest with them about what we'd seen and what we found. And the public finances are still, we mustn't forget that, they're still in a very difficult position. And there are elements of the budget coming up that are still going to be very difficult. But that doesn't mean that Britain hasn't got amazing things to offer and that there aren't parts of this country and opportunities in this country that are, extremely exciting prospects.
Do you think the second part of your answer should have been emphasised a bit more at the beginning?
I think it would have been strange for a government that, had just got into power after a, historic election loss from them and victory for us to look at the state of the state and say, there's loads going on here. It's very sort of boosterism would have seemed out of place and wrong. And I also think that, a big part of the way that Keir Starmer sees what has gone wrong in politics is an unwillingness to confront hard things and be honest and open about them. And there were a set of shocking things that, my friends and colleagues who took control of these departments found. And it was important, I think, for the public to hear that they now had a government who would be honest about those things.
What do you make of today and how it's gone for Labour?
Well, I'm all in favour of investment into the UK. The UK is one of the best places to invest in the whole world, and it will continue to be so. And so, of course, I wish them every success. And I'm absolutely delighted to hear Wes and indeed the Prime Minister talking about deregulation. I think they could find a home in the Conservative Party talking like that. For months, I've been saying the Labour Party would position to the free market right of the Conservatives. They need to turn what is a very broad and shallow victory into a deep one, because they're obviously seeking to become the natural party of government. They'll do that through fiscal responsibility and securing growth. And it's all there in the rhetoric. So, it's lovely to be proven right once again, but that's what I see happening.
I'm not sure Wes Streeting's going to thank you, saying he's got home in the Conservative Party.
I said to him on the way out we could form a great government together, Wes. I've teased him before. Like when he went to Singapore to look at the health system, they are transparently positioning to the right of the Conservative Party on a number of issues. And when they do so, the Conservative Party should simply back them in doing the right thing.
What do you make of that, Josh?
That Steve's a little too obsessed with the left-right spectrum on where these things sit. The idea that noticing that in this country there are regulators and regulation everywhere that is not doing its job and that's getting in the way of growth, that's not a left-right thing to think. The starting point of this government always is working people have been let down for a very long time by 14 years of Steve Baker's party. Our job will be to start from their interests and work back from that. And actually, there are lots of regulations and regulators who are not really serving the interests of the majority of this country. And a Labour government is absolutely about making sure that where they're not, we do away with them or we change them.
In his interview, Wes talked about the growth under the last Labour government. I think it is worth saying that under the last Labour government, the UK money supply tripled from £700 billion in 1997 to 2.2 trillion in 2010. It was an enormous accelerating rush to destruction in the global financial crisis, and that's why they thought they'd abolish boom and bust, because they were living on, for want of a better term, a giant credit card of ever-expanding debt. And they won't get...
The growth rate was also double what it was in the last 14 years.
This is the point I'm making.
So if the core mission is growth, we did quite a good job of that.
This is the point I'm making. If you found growth on an accelerating increase in the money supply, you will get a bust afterwards. It was Hayek's Nobel lecture. Happy to talk about it for the rest of the program.
I'm going to take this very high, kind of faluted conversation and bring it way, way lower, because Keir Starmer, we understand, is having Elton John performance tonight. If you were going to pick an Elton John song to kind of sum up the first 100 days, what would you guys go for? Go on, Josh.
Knowing that Josh is an AI expert, and I've done my MSc was in computer science, I asked ChatGPT, which came up with "I'm still standing" on the positive side, and on the negative side, sad, so sad. It's a sad, sad situation, and it's getting more absurd. So I'm sticking with the second choice.
What do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, after sitting in the House of Commons today, listening to the Conservatives lecturing us on, how to run a responsible government and standards of public life, sorry is the hardest word. It has to be it for me.
Very good, very good. Thanks both very much indeed. We'll have lots more from Josh and Steve later on. You're watching the Politics Hub. Coming up, is Brexit the elephant in the room holding back the British economy? That's the view of one Labour MP. And the Foreign Secretary today called for a reset in UK-EU relations on a visit to Brussels. So are we heading for more Brexit drama? We'll discuss that next.
I'm Katie Spencer and I'm Sky News' arts and entertainment correspondent. When you think of Glastonbury, it's mud you want and music. They're going to cross to us live in a minute. Okay. Thank you so much. Brad Pitt is now a prolific producer behind the scenes.
It's not a mystery to me. We always were capable of doing this.
Oh, they're wonderful children as an audience.
Who did that? Maverick here on the red carpet. I'm so excited, Tom Cruise. This is the story of the night.
It's the little independent film that could.
We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world.
Nor have I ever struck any woman in my life.
There's this illusion of power.
Are you feeling well? I remember covering the Oscars and that now infamous moment, the Will Smith slap. Nobody could quite believe that it had happened. You can tell from these crowds just how excited people are for the return of Pride.
These actors playing the lead roles were born long after the Sex Pistols broke up.
Are you pleased that you did say yes to the job?
I've never regretted it.
As a team, we've interviewed some of the biggest stars in the world. It can be incredibly surreal being swept up in their world, but we try to give you an honest sense of how these people really are.
OK, I'll talk to you.
Don't leave me!
Yeah, OK.
There's no easy goodies. There's no easy baddies.
I've had a great time here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Hello, welcome back to the Politics Hub. Well, while the Prime Minister and much of the Cabinet have been trying to drum up support from the business sector, the Foreign Secretary travelled to Luxembourg to meet with his EU counterparts as the government continues its attempt of a reset of relations with the bloc. But those relations have cast a shadow back home, with the London Mayor Sadiq Khan once again raising the question of membership of the single market and the senior Labour MP saying that Brexit was the elephant in the room. Well, David Lammy was the first Foreign Secretary to attend the EU's Foreign Affairs Council for 2 years. He called the visit historic.
Delighted to be here at the Foreign Affairs Council for this historic moment that marks our EU reset, and delighted to talk to 27 member states and their foreign ministers about important issues of European security. The UK and Europe's security is indivisible.
Right, let's bring in Josh and Steve, shall we? I mean, Steve, you're kind of like Mr. Brexit in some ways. What do you make of what Labour's trying to do? Does there need to be closer cooperation?
Well, the Trade and Cooperation Agreement was up for review next year anyway. The relationship was reset by a very carefully worded apology to Ireland, which was made, you may recall, a couple of years ago. That led to the Windsor Framework being concluded, and that's what reset the relationship. Personally, I've got great relations with a number of EU ambassadors. People might find that hard to believe, but they've always known that I've been honest with them. And one day when I write the memoir, it'll be interesting for people to see just how many times I spoke to ambassadors behind the scenes to get to where we got to. So after the Windsor Framework was concluded, I went to see one of the major ambassadors, and he was alive with what was possible. Mutual recognition of qualifications, he raised. I responded, why not deal with the cabotage problem for touring bands? Let them cross and go anywhere. And we were agreeing with what could be done, but all consistent with the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. What we can't do is go into the Customs Union or the EEA or both, because the EU is a rules-based, it's a legal order. And to be in both the Customs Union and the EEA, the single market, you'd have to be in the EU. So when you raise the single market, and Wes responded that we won't be rejoining the EU. That is why, because if you're Turkey, you're in the Customs Union, but not the EEA, and you have border checks. If you're Norway, EEA, not the Customs Union, you have border checks. The only way to completely remove them is to rejoin the EU, which they can't do. So what we need to do is just be really very realistic that the Trade and Cooperation Review is coming up, and I'm in favour of it being broader and deeper, consistent with our status as an independent country. And I think that's the reset which I and others achieved. And quite honestly, I should be happy if David Lammy makes a success of, frankly, the train that I set going.
There you go. Josh, I'm interested in your view on this, because, we've heard from Sadiq Khan saying, look, rejoining the single market shouldn't be, off the table. You talk to Wes Streeting and he's like, it's not even part of the debate. There will be some on the left who are like, look, we've left the EU, we're not going to rejoin the EU, but why on earth shouldn't this be part of the conversation?
Well, one of the reasons why I think Sadiq Khan is wrong, and I disagree with what he said, is the sort of trauma of listening to Steve recount that history. It's history. It's done. It's over. That's not where we are. And I think looking forwards and ahead, there's a whole wealth of opportunity that we have now to grasp. And we live in a world now that's very different from the world of 2016. And in that world, some of the great strengths of this country, like our defence sector, for example, are really important assets when building a new kind of partnership with Europe. Europe can't supply the munitions that Ukraine needs to defend itself at the moment. That's absurd, particularly in an era where, American leadership of the world is changing. We need to be able to produce those munitions, and Britain has an absolutely vital role to play in it. That is at the heart of a new kind of relationship with Europe, not reopening these old questions that are, frankly, history.
Okay. Yeah, they are.
Thank you very much indeed. Interesting to talk to you both on that. Coming up next on the Politics Hub. The Conservatives tried today to keep the pressure on the government over the freebies row. Did they succeed? John Craig will be here to tell us. Plus, a Sky News investigation reveals thousands of people are being denied potentially life-saving obesity treatments on the NHS. We'll hear from the Health Secretary on why he thinks they're not right for everyone. Hello, welcome back. Well, the Conservatives may be still engulfed in a leadership contest, but some of their front bench are still trying to do the day job of opposition. John Glenn, the Shadow Paymaster General, asked an urgent question about the freebies row that's caught up both the Prime Minister and some of his senior cabinet team. And it led to us finding out about new rules that are going to be brought in for cabinet ministers on declarations.
Labour ministers have now been beset by a series of scandals involving freebies. The Prime Minister has claimed that this was all a perfectly sensible arrangement. Does the Right Honourable Lady still believe this? What gifts and hospitality can ministers now accept? Can cabinet ministers continue to party in DJ booths in Ibiza? Will ministers be banned from taking junkets at the Oasis 25 tour? Or was it just Taylor Swift that was a handout too far?
We will take no lectures from the party opposite on gifts and hospitality, standards in public life or trust in politics. Let me tell the Right Honourable Gentleman what shattered trust in politics, the behaviour of the Conservatives in their 14 years in power. Partying in Downing Street whilst the whole country sacrificed their freedom, handing lucrative COVID contracts to friends and donors, failing to expel MPs caught breaking the rules. That's the difference between this government and the last one. We are strengthening the rules.
Camera shot makes it look like it's John Glenn on his own on the Conservative benches there.
I was going to mention that.
Sorry, I stole your line. Chief Political Correspondent John Craig here with us.
It was actually Josh who, in his question this afternoon, made the point about how sparsely populated the Tory benches were. I'm not sure that was a great success for the Tories, that urgent question, because, first of all, as you could see, Mr Glenn was all on his own on the front bench. There weren't that many Tory MPs in the House. And Ellie Reeves, backed up by a lot of Labour backbenchers, absolutely launched an absolute ferocious onslaught on Tory sleaze. Owen Paterson, Partygate, and Pincher, the three Ps I call them, Paterson, Partygate and Pincher, which of course brought down Boris Johnson. Now, she was talking about closing what she called a Tory freebies loophole, which means that ministers in the part up to now have been able to dodge declaring various freebies, if you like, whether it's opera tickets, concert tickets. Labour have tonight produced this dossier. We like a dossier, don't we?
We do.
And it's a great long list of Tory freebies, including Rishi Sunak, Robert Jenrick, Kemi Badenoch. There's quite a lot of Oliver Dowden in there as well. But yes, they were lively exchanges. Don't think it really paid off for Mr Glenn. OK, they tried to pin down Ellie Reeves on why the Attorney-General got involved in the police escort for Taylor Swift. She wasn't having any of that. Police matter, operational and so on. There was a good line from Mr Glenn, actually, at one point. Scandals like cash for croissants, free gear Kia and passes for glasses. That's some newspaper headlines, isn't it? But, I mean, Ellie Reeves really came out fighting. I've never seen her quite so punchy. But the Labour were able to mention Owen Paterson, Scott Benton, Boris Johnson's freebie holiday in Mustique, the flat, everything else. A great long list of Conservative sleaze, as Labour called it. And I'm not sure that... I mean, John Glenn didn't really get any answer to his questions. What the government is promising to do is clean up the whole process, close this loophole so ministers are subject to similar rules to backbenchers, the Register of Members' Interests. That'll apply to ministers now. Closing the loophole, Ellie Reeves said, in a very, very combative performance. And John Glenn was a bit... and talk about Billy No-Mates there. I mean, normally you get somebody... I mean, Steve will remember this. When you're on the front bench, you want a few colleagues around you, don't you, to give you a bit of moral support. He didn't have any support.
Poor old John. Thank you very much indeed. John Craig, there, Chief Political Correspondent. Well, that story may, of course, feature in tomorrow's newspapers. We'll have our extended press preview from 10:30 this evening with tonight's news and tomorrow's headlines. Joining us will be the political editors of The Sun and The Guardian, Harry Cole and Pippa Creer. Right, let's chat to Josh and Steve, shall we? What do you think, Steve? What happened to all his support? Where were they all?
Well, it's a good question. If you're going to do a UQ, an urgent question, on an issue of the day, a big issue, you want to round up some colleagues and get them in, at least on each side of you on the front bench and just behind you. I think this is where, I'm afraid now, in the Commons, they're hammering the nail. The point's been made, the public know what's happened, it has cut through. I think they were only 1 point ahead of us in the last poll. I don't think... I wouldn't have done that one, I'm afraid, but, you know, John obviously felt he needed to. It's the sort of thing now one would pursue at Cabinet Office questions rather than the UQ, so I think we've given it too much profile. I think we shouldn't keep wrestling down into the gutter. We all just get filthy. It's time, I think, to raise the debate.
Interesting. You had a crack as well, didn't you, today?
I certainly did. I mean, you know, not only was John Glenn virtually on his own, the Conservatives who were on the opposition benches were sort of spread out like a fan as if they couldn't bear each other's, you know, smell. So it was a very strange thing to be, you know, have this shadow minister haranguing Ellie Reeves with almost no one behind him. But, you know, the interesting thing was it came on the same day that the newspapers, the Times, I think it was reporting that, you know, a slew of Conservatives are intending to stand down if Labour passes its clampdown on second jobs. And you think, well, OK, that's your attitude to standards in public life on the same day that you're asking a UQ about it.
So with standards and jobs, it depends what the job is. So with lawyers and with doctors, I think most people don't object. I mean, Geoffrey Cox is a famously busy lawyer, and his constituents don't seem to object in the least. They keep re-electing him. They don't seem to be... I don't think anyone's seriously alleging impropriety towards him. He does the job with great skill, and he does it alongside being a lawyer. So, but obviously lobbying's banned, and quite rightly. But, you know, personally, I having gone from the armed forces to private sector software businesses to Parliament, I do think there's a lot of merit in backbenchers continuing to have some connection to the real world.
I mean, that's all fine, Steve, but it's slightly missing the point that in a day when the Conservative Party have decided to ask us a UQ about standards in public life, the newspapers are running a story because a bunch of briefings from, you know, their backbench MPs that they don't want to be an MP because they might not be allowed to.
Is it fair, though, to the point that Steve was making, that it is good for people to have different experience? When, you know, you don't want just people who are just, I don't know, special advisors or just work in politics.
I mean, the proposals on the table are not an outright ban on second jobs. You know, it's a clampdown, it's described. And the key principle that's trying to get at is that the relationship between whatever work you do outside of Parliament and the decisions you make, the things you say, you know, the ambitions that you have inside Parliament, that the latter does not, you know, come from the former in any sort of complicated way that might sully your interests as an actor in politics. That's the goal of these rules. And that's not to say that, you know, you can't come into Parliament with great experience, you can't keep connections to and even do some work in some of the kinds of institutions that Steve just mentioned. It's to say that what you do in politics should not be driven by the financial interest that you have outside Parliament. That's the right principle.
That, of course, is absolutely fair enough. And one of the ways to deal with that is transparency. And we've had rules throughout the time I've been in Parliament. I was in Parliament. I complied with them while I was a director of an aerospace turnaround in 2013, and I've never had any complaints about it.
OK, thanks both very much indeed. Now, Sky News analysis has found that the NHS rollout of the weight loss jab Wegovy is happening far more slowly than planned. As our science correspondent Thomas Moore reports, the postcode lottery is being blamed.
It's just a slow, painful process.
Every step is painful for Ken. He needs a double knee replacement, but at 25 stone, he's considered too high risk to have the surgery.
And you can see I'm huffing and puffing just for coming up that.
He's been told to lose 5 stone to have the operation, but he can't exercise. His last hope was the weight loss drug Wegovy.
This is the actual referral form.
His GP referred him to the hospital obesity clinic. Back came a text.
Currently our waiting list is around 2 years and we are unable to offer medication. It's all shocking, isn't it? I just wonder how many other people are getting this.
Wegovy should have been available through specialist hospital clinics since December, but Freedom of Information requests by Sky News show that by the end of April, only 14 out of 42 integrated care boards in England had officially rolled out the drug through clinics, prescribing the drug to just 838 people. That's much less than the 13,500 patients that NICE, the NHS Cost Effectiveness Authority, estimated should be receiving the drug.
The first place they work is the brain, that they affect appetite and give you a feeling of fullness.
This obesity expert says there's prejudice even within the NHS.
We know we have something that we can offer them, but are unable to offer it to everyone who could benefit from it. Money follows for other illnesses, but doesn't follow for this illness. And that's really a form of bias, and seeing that within the NHS is a bit soul-destroying.
Sally also tried to get weight loss jabs on the NHS. Weighing 18 stone and having high blood pressure should have qualified her, but she too got turned down.
Shall we take them now?
Now she pays £160 a month for a private supply she can only afford with the help from her dad.
So the penny's charged, you grab your skin. That is it.
Is it worth it?
Oh, most definitely. Now my food is on much smaller plates, and 9 times out of 10 I don't even finish what I've got.
There'll be lots of people who say, do it the hard way, do it with diet, do it with exercise, don't go for an injection.
Yeah, I've done that, and even my boss said, why would you want to be putting that drug in your body? Because I'm desperate. Ready, go!
People can lose more than 15% of their body weight in a matter of months. NHS England said specialist weight management services are provided based on local priorities. It's working with the government, industry and experts to ensure that new treatments can be rolled out safely, effectively and affordably.
I usually get up about there.
But for desperate patients, some waiting for life-changing surgery, it's happening far too slowly. Thomas Moore, Sky News.
Well, of course, we heard from the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, earlier on in the programme, but we did just want to get his response to that report. So I asked if he has concerns that the drugs are being rolled out too slowly.
Well, I mean, look, my view on this is pretty nuanced, actually. I think that some of these drugs can be game-changing in terms of tackling obesity. Obesity is costing us 3 times the amount that smoking's costing in terms of the cost to our economy and to our nation's health. It is a challenge we've got to tackle, and in particular, I mean, Eli Lilly is a really good example of this in terms of some of their new treatments. For those people that are so obese that diet, exercise doesn't feel like it's having much of an impact, it feels like you're on a losing battle, I think the drugs can make a really big impact in terms of getting weight under control, some encouraging signs around prevention of cardiovascular disease, big killers, heart disease, heart attack, stroke, really big potential there. Where I think we just got to be careful, though, is that we don't see these drugs as an excuse not to do the right thing in terms of our diet, nutrition, exercise, or to use them as cosmetic drugs for the Instagram perfect body.
Can I ask, though, why not? I mean that kind of in a way, like, are we a bit sniffy about this, about people who, like, you should do the hard yards, you should calorie count, you should do a run every morning? Well, if the drug does it for you, what's the problem with that?
Well, I'd say 2 things, really. One is, particularly in the social media world we live in today, where people are seeking the body beautiful picture for Instagram and are therefore at far greater risk in terms of mental ill health, eating disorders, body dysmorphia, all of those things that can be associated with the downsides of social media. I think we've got to make sure that any drugs are used responsibly and under proper medical supervision. That's the first thing. But secondly, the reason why I do kind of balk a bit at this idea that you could just kind of take the drug and it's all OK is the drugs do come at a cost, and they come at a cost to the NHS. And it's great the NHS is there for us and it's free at the point of use. OK, we have to pay some prescription charges, but that doesn't mean that you should use it and abuse it.
Wes Streeting there on his nuanced view on some of those weight loss drugs. Still to come on the Politics Hub. I now fear I look more like George V after the Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds jokes about having a royal doppelganger. We're going to be looking back at some other political lookalikes.
Coming up on the UK Tonight at 8, we'll take a look at why thousands of people with severe obesity are waiting for weight loss jabs on the NHS. I'll also be speaking to Figan Murray, whose son Martin was killed in the Manchester Arena bombing, as a law in his name returns for its second reading in Parliament. And Olympian Gail Ems will tell us all about the lost lionesses. All that, much more on the UK Tonight at 8.
I'm I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling. War, unrest, revolutions.
It's not his country, it's ours, and we're going to take it back.
They have succeeded for the first time in their country's history in removing a leader from power. Now, freedom! There was fighting here, but there's clearly now a lull, and they're using it to bring up more ammunition. We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world. This is a mass exodus in which Russia is hemorrhaging some of its brightest and its best. According to the local weather channel, there have been more than 2,500 lightning strikes, torrential rain and flash flooding, all on top of this week's lethal tornado. What stays with you most in this job is some of the people you meet. What is your worst fear about what the Russians want to do to the children?
They're just boosting demographics by stealing young people.
Would you like to take the opportunity, Mr. President, on Sky News to invite Barack Obama to come here? Mr. Trump, are you running for president? Can you confirm it?
We're going to take a look, a very serious look.
On that day, we saw your fighters killing women, killing children. Was that a mistake? Did you go too far? You couldn't control your fighters? The full force of the state is being used to crush any protest. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued with its ultimatum to the people of Ashkelon, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
Another alarm. The mood here is jittery and nervous.
We're seeing the world get more and more divided, and it's our job to try to make sense of it all.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live. I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Hello, welcome back to the Politics Hub. Now, the Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, has been busy drumming up investment into the UK, as we've been hearing. But he also made a self-deprecating joke. He said, when I first got elected, some people joked I looked like Prince William, but after 14 long years in opposition, I now fear I look more like George V. Take a look and see what you think. I mean, he's not that bad looking, is he, George V, to be fair?
The nose is similar. The hair is quite different.
There's a bit of a similarity.
Yeah.
It did also get us thinking about other politicians who've been likened to someone or something else. I should just say, if any of them are watching, this is not us saying it on Team Politics Hub. This is other lookalikes that have been made.
Jeremy
you can
Corbyn.
make your own.
Of course, it's Jeremy Corbyn.
So this, I didn't actually know who this was. My team had to say this shows how bad I am with films. This is Star Wars' Obi-Wan Kenobi and actor Sir Alec McGuinness. Who do you reckon that is?
Jeremy Corbyn.
Jeremy Corbyn.
But Alec, he's a much less handsome version, dare I say.
It was
Jeremy Corbyn's less handsome.
Yeah.
Jeremy Corbyn. I mean, you can see the likeness, to be
You
fair.
definitely can, yeah.
You can see the likeness. Has anyone ever seen Jeremy Corbyn and Obi-Wan Kenobi in the same room? Right. How about this person? Let's go to the next one. Who faced some jibes from opposition MPs who likened them to this classic cartoon character from Wallace and Gromit?
It's got to be Ed Miliband.
It was Ed Miliband. It was a bit cruel, but I should say this was not us making it. And he also did make the joke himself in our defence. He did poke fun at himself about this comparison as well. Right, next, in a poll on how well people could recognise our politicians, who do people get mixed up with? The Hollywood actor Tom Hanks.
Steve Baker.
What politician?
Thank you, George. Thank you.
You'll take that one, right?
I will. For 10%.
Who do you reckon then?
Who could it be?
It was...
David Cameron.
It wasn't David Cameron.
George Osborne.
George Osborne.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess there's a bit of a likeness.
Bit of a
but
likeness.
not...
If George changed his hair quite a lot.
Yeah.
Prominent noses.
Similar cheek.
And who do people think the character Iggle Piggle from the kids' TV programme The Night Garden...
You've got me now.
Look like? Let's have a look at Iggle Piggle. Who's that? Which politician is that?
Boris Johnson. Little tough hair.
Little tough.
Bit of a joker.
Any guesses? It was David Cameron.
Yeah.
You can see the similarity.
If you,
a little bit?
You could get a caricature to...
I reckon that's my celebrity look like as well. It's all about the big forehead. So, yeah, I think there's... I'm going to go with that one. Iggle Piggle as my celebrity look.
A young Scarlett Johansson.
He's a great guy, Iggle Piggle. So,
a young Scarlett Johansson.
Stop it. Any others that you liken to yourselves?
Who was it you were saying you want to play you on a movie? Sorry, I'm outing you, I am.
You're outing me. Ben Affleck.
Yeah.
Ben Affleck.
I think that's a good one.
Gotta be. We're out of time. Thanks both very much. Really fun programme this evening. That's it from us tonight. I'll see you tomorrow at 7. Up next, it's the UK Tonight with Sarah J. Me. Of course, at 9 p.m, The World with Yada Hakeem. But I'll see you tomorrow for more Politics Hub. Have a great evening.